Hi, everybody. So I want to talk to you today about our second big question of instruction. Our first, of course, is what should students be learning, which comes down to unpacking our TEKS and backward planning. The second, how will we know that they have learned it if we don't test for this? Then we're just, spraying and praying that they've got it. And then the third is how will they best learn it, which comes down to the actual planning itself of how you're going to teach that in the lesson. So today I want to focus in on a resource that we have to help with the second question, how will we know that they learned it? And that is AWARE. So when you go into EduPhoria through the district website, you go ahead and click on AWARE, and this is going to help us with creating unit assessments, exit tickets, student practice questions, checks for understanding. It's a bank of questions that are aligned to our TEKS. So when you log in, you're going to be on the Analyze page, which if you've administered a district CBA or benchmark, you're familiar with. But if you want to create an assessment, we're going to go to the Assessments tab on the left-hand side over here. And once we go to the Assessments tab, we have different options. We can create a new blank test. We can copy an existing test, maybe from last year, edit, make changes. And then there's a few other options, but those are going to be the two you use the most. Right now, we're going to create a new blank test. So once we get here, I'm going to put in a title. If I'm creating an exit ticket, I like to put it by TEKS, so that way I can find it easy if I want to search it in years later as opposed to a date. Your dates are going to change year to year. From there, you're just going to fill in the blanks. So I'm going to create an 8th grade assessment. You can put the approaches, meets, and masters standards. Those are more appropriate when you're giving a CBA or benchmark. But if I'm just giving a daily exit ticket, my standards should be a little bit higher. They literally just talked about it. So I like to input 70 and 90 for satisfactory and advanced. I'm creating a teacher test, and I'm going to add my course. So I'll add. All right. So from there, I'm going to generate my test. And I'm on this page once I generate. And so I have different tabs up here. General is just all of the information I just input. If I want to change anything, I would go there. I could also delete this assessment from this page. From the questions page, though, is where I'm going to start adding questions. So to add, I'm going to put add new item. If I put add item, this is somewhere I would go if I were to create my own questions. However, I want to use the test bank. So instead, I'm going to hit search item bank. And then I'm going to search for that standard. So 8.5C, and I could either type it in or scroll down. And from there, it's going to give me a bank of items. Teachers within Weslaco ISD have access to both TEKS bank, item bank, and TEKS resource system item bank. If I don't click anything, then I'm going to see both of those automatically. I also have the option to sort by different items. I can, for instance, if I only want selected response, or if I like ABCD, or if I only want constructed response or written response or numerical, I can change those here. And then, of course, in the lower grade levels, if I scroll lower, then I have the options for both English or Spanish. If you get beyond 5th grade, then you're only going to see English questions. So from here, if I click on the question itself, then I can view them. And if I like the question, I'm going to hit add question, and you'll see it pop up over here. So of course, I would spend a little bit more time making sure these are aligned, making sure that I'm hitting on all of the key knowledge and skills that students need. But since I'm just showing you how to create a test, I'm just going to grab a few here to add. So let's say that I want to do a 5-question exit ticket. I've got my 5 questions. I'm going to go ahead and hit add to test. Once I've added, I'm going to be back to my main page here. So I can, of course, if I want to change anything about them, I can click the edit button and make those changes. But from here, my test is pretty much done. I'm just going to go to my layout view on the top, and I can change these to columns if I want to save space for printing. If you're going to be assessing online, I highly encourage you to leave it as a full question because they get smaller when you do it online. And then also you have elementary, which is going to be your larger font, intermediate, and secondary. So if you're going to be testing online, leave it on elementary. And you can change the amount of space before or after questions. Of course, this is going to matter if you're going to print out that test. So from here, your test is done. Now we want to start talking about how we can administer this test. And so if you're in person and you want to do paper and pencil, I'm just going to hit print from this page, and it will print out that test for me. If I want to print out the answer key, so I have it as a teacher, all I'm going to do is change this from test booklet to test key, and then I'll hit print again. If I want to administer this test online, I need to change my status from pending, meaning that I can edit it, to active. Once I change that from pending to active, I'm going to go over to my administration key. And from my administration tab, I'm going to select a couple of things. So first, if I'm taking a math test or a science test where a calculator is able to be used on that STAR test, I want to enable it here so that way they have it. And you can choose either basic or scientific. I also have the option to enable students to view submitted responses. This is new and I'm really excited about it. A lot of times teachers would opt to use Google Forms using these test questions, but now students are able to get that immediate feedback. It's a little bit different than forms in that it doesn't tell them what is the correct answer, but it does tell them if they were correct or incorrect, and they can go back to see those test questions. So they can do test corrections, using the resources they have after they take that test. So I want to go ahead and enable that. I also now can randomize my questions. So that makes it a whole lot harder for students to cheat. They're not going to be seeing the same test, and it's not even like having a Form A and Form B. Every student's going to see a different form of that test. And so that's also a really cool new feature that they can use. I can also choose if I want English only, if they get the text-to-speech function, Spanish only, or let the student choose. And then another new feature is to enable a lockdown browser. Now, this is a brand new feature. From what I have heard is that it won't be operational with Chromebooks until next month in October, but it's still there. You can play with it and use it out. The worst that happens is the student's still able to open up other browsers. And so of course, this is that way the students are locked into the test. They can't look up answers, via Google while they're taking it. So from here, I'm ready to administer. I can preview my online test as though I were a student by clicking this button in the top right. And then I see what that looks like. Now, one more thing as I'm looking here, I notice, to answer this question, my students need to have a resource. And so I'm going to actually show you how, once you've created the test, to go back and edit. So if it's inactive, I need to take it back to pending. And I'm going to go back to my questions. So I'm going to find that question and I'm going to add in a resource. So question number 3, students are going to need a periodic table. So to add a resource, just like I would add a question, I'm going to hit add item, as if I were creating it. And you would change here if you were to do a selected response, constructed response, but I'm going to add a resource instead. So from here, I want to upload a picture. And of course, I would have had to save the picture to my computer already, which I have. So I want to use this STAR 8th grade science periodic table. And if you have a resource, if you're STAR tested, even if you're a grade leading up to a STAR test, don't put in a random periodic table, because once they see that STAR periodic table, it's going to look different and things are going to be in different places where they put the atomic number and where they put the mass. And so use the actual STAR TEA approved resource. I'm going to insert that file now. So that way students have access. So I'm going to hit create. And now I need to link any questions that require that by simply going to the question and hitting this link button. So I'm going to link it to that resource. If I had more than one, then I would be able to choose which one to link it to, and I'll update. So now I'm going to go back and I'm going to view this by hitting active status and going back to my administration tab. And I want to see what this looks like as a student. So I want to find that question, and here we go. So if it's linked to a resource, they'll see the resource on the left here, and then they'll see the questions on the right. Of course, so they're going to see a full screen, so it'll be slightly larger. Because I have a touch screen, I can enlarge and I can see this fairly well. But looking at this, I have to think many of my students have Chromebooks. This might be very small, so I would definitely want to upload this resource to my Google Classroom and potentially have it printed out at the campus so students can pick them up if they don't have the option to print at home. Alrighty, so from here, if I like the way that this looks, and by the way, let me just show you our speech function.
Teacher note, students should be provided with a periodic table for this item. What is a common physical property of Fe, Co, Ni, Chu, and Zn?
And so you see that the speech to text is a great resource, but of course there are some things that have limited ability. For instance, reading periodic symbols, reading chemical formulas, for instance. They would read it as it phonemically sounds, but
They easily shatter.
it definitely does help when your students have that accommodation that they need. So I'm going to close out. Now, if I were to actually administer this, I make sure it's in active mode. I like the way it looks, and I'm going to come back over to my Analyze tab on the far left-hand side. From here, to actually administer it, I'm going to hit Test Available, and I'm going to choose which test that I want to proctor. And so I'm going to find that test that I just created, and I'm going to click Online Test Proctoring. Then at the top, I'll hit Online Test Proctoring again, and since I clicked it, it will appear in this tab. I then want to choose which class period I'm administering it to, and I'm going to go ahead and click Select All Students. Once my students are selected, then I can start the test for all of them. As students test, I'm going to see their statuses change. So I'll see if they haven't started, I'll see if where they're progressing, and I'll see once they've submitted. Let's say that you're timing a test and they have an hour to take it. Then at the end, I can hit Force Submit for David here, and it will stop the test for him. Let's say that David submitted his test and he says, Ms. Martinez, I accidentally hit the submit button. I'm not done. As a teacher, I can go back in and I can reopen this for him. And so I have control of that. Once students are done testing, I'm going to stop that test. If I don't stop the test, students will be able to continue to log into that until you hit the stop button. So make sure to stop the test once the class period ends, so that way you don't have students seeing that in their portfolios all the time. All right, so that is on your end. Now let's see, what does this look like as a student? So I'm going to copy the student login URL here, which it is always the same when you test on Aware. So once you post that to your Google Classroom, you don't have to post it again. So anytime you test on Aware, just tell them to go back to that link. And so if I go to a Google Classroom, I'm just going to post this in for students, and I'll make a note for them to let them know that this is the Aware system testing. And I also just want to make sure that you do know that the student login is going to be their student ID number, the number only, and that their student password is going to be a lowercase p followed by their student ID number altogether. So I would post that. When students click on that link, they're going to go to a page that looks like this. And again, they're going to put their student ID followed by their student ID number. So that's it. That is how you create assessments on Aware. I'm going to be sending out a couple of other links with more information on new features like the speech to text, how to randomize the question order, and on that lockdown browser. So look forward to those videos, and I hope you enjoyed this. If you have any questions, if you'd like to reach out, any content area, feel free to contact me. My name is Claudia Martinez. I'm the K-12 Science Strategist, and my email is clamartinez@wisd.us. Thank you all and have a great day.